Okay, folks, I want to go through the art and aesthetics unit now and walk you through essentially what we're going to be doing with this assignment so that everybody understands it from the start, okay? So first thing, let's go over to the calendar, see what's going on. Let me get myself out of the way here. So we're beginning the art essay, and I've put 3 different paintings up in the discussion area, and you're supposed to go to them and describe them and then analyze them. And I want to talk a little bit about analyzing first before we spend much time on it. Because what I'm not going to do is load you guys up with a bunch of reading, okay? Instead, we do have a good deal of work to do. We've got just over a week left, but this should be slightly different, and but it's going to use all of the skills you've already learned, okay? So I've got discussions for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and we've got the essay due on Friday. We've got a quiz on Monday too, okay? So there's a quiz on Monday on Chapter 3, and then the quiz on Chapter 4 you're going to have Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. You can finish it. So quiz on Monday, Chapter 3. But there's also the art to write about. Now, this shouldn't be that rough, but I just want everybody to understand what we're going to do with that, beforehand, because it can be frustrating if you don't quite follow along with what's the difference between, describing it and analyzing it. You're going to see it's using a lot of the same skills we have. And here they are. I've got them at the bottom. So you can see Simabui, all of these are taken from, this is going to be one of the paintings. All of these are taken from the writing of Vasari. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through some of these and show you what you need to do. So there's one for Simabui, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, Botticelli, Perugino. So you're going to describe and then analyze, really assess whether it's beautiful or sublime. That's what we're going to be doing in the discussion area, and that's going to relate directly to the essay. Okay, and remember what we've been doing all along. We've been trying to learn analysis, critical thinking, what it is and what it isn't. And one of the things I've repeated a number of times is that analysis is not a matter of opinion. Okay, it's not just saying I like this or I don't. I think that's good. I don't like it or whatever. That is opinion. And so with art, you often have people talking about opinions. But there always is in all of these fields a matter of analysis. How do you work through something carefully? There is most certainly room for disagreement. Definitely in art, but the same type of procedures in thinking, critical thinking, exists in the sciences, in literature, in areas such as business or sociology. There's always a matter of critical thinking, what's often called analysis. And these are areas where people do disagree. People, if you know the sciences at all and have any real familiarity with it, they often have a very engaged arguments over what something means, the importance of it, whether or not it works, or other things. So we're going to go into art and use that skill of critical thinking. Okay, so let me walk through it for a bit, and I'll get through the assignment 2, how we're going to do the assignment. Let me call that up really quickly. Here, I think I've got an open one right here. Here we go. Look at that. I'm all prepared. So this is the 4th essay, and we're going to be writing a 6-paragraph essay. Hey, same thing we've always done, that analyzes a single artwork covered by Vasari and is the lives of the most excellent painters. Now, that is the work that you should have. I urge you to download it onto your computer. Okay, that's what I've done. So here's my version. And I'm going to come back to this in a bit, okay? So, so I'm going to urge you to download it on your computer just because it makes life a little bit easier. So, and you can choose one. Do not try to read the whole book yet. If you got time later on in life and you've got nothing better to do, go read the whole thing. It's kind of neat. That's what people like me do. You don't have to do that. but you're going to grab an artist out of there, any artist. I'm going to let you pick anybody out of there, and I'll talk about why in a bit. Pick any artist and decide on any one artwork. I'm going to urge you to go to a painting because that's what I'm going to discuss. Can you do a sculpture out of the Vasari? Sure, I guess so. But I would urge you not to because we've only got just over a week left. I'm going to teach it by painting. I would stick with the paintings just to make your life easier. Okay? If you're really a sculpture nut, go for it. But I would urge you to stick to a painting by one of the painters covered in Vasari. What I will not do is allow folks to go outside of Vasari. Okay? Vasari is a major figure in the art history world and in the art world. Everybody knows him. So that's the way it is. And it's helpful to get a parameter to go after something and not do any artwork that anybody wants, because then things get much more complicated and get out of control. That's when students actually, it's always a matter of giving you enough rope that you can hang yourself with. If I give folks too much freedom, they get involved in things that don't work well. Okay, so the Vasari gives us parameters to work within. You know you're going to get important artwork by going through Vasari. Okay, so any artist covered in there, you can go after. Okay, I'm going to urge you to go for some of them and not for the most famous ones, but you can do what you want. Describe some aspect or segment of the artwork carefully in each body paragraph and analyze how the aesthetics and history play out in the composition. So what you're going to be doing, instead of going to quotations in a longer work, you're going to be going to parts or aspects of that painting or that artwork in each body paragraph and describing it and telling me what's going on with it. So one part of the painting, describing what's going on in that one part, and then analyzing why it's important. Then going to another part, describing what's going on, and then analyzing it, showing me what's important. I hope you can see we're doing the same thing, but under different circumstances. Now we're doing it with art. What we did with Antigone, what we did with Shoah, and what we did with civil rights, we're now going to be doing with art. Artworks from the Middle Ages and from the Renaissance. That's what Vasari covers. So what you're not going to do is judge the artwork itself according to taste, and I'll talk about that. You're not going to tell me you like it or you don't like it, okay? You're going to tell me whether you think it's beautiful or sublime. Focus on one aspect of the work of art in each of the body paragraphs at a time, such as figures to the side, things like that. That's what we're going to be doing, okay? I'm going to come back to that more next week, but let me get you set up a little bit. So I hope you get the idea. We're doing everything we did before, but now we're doing it with a painting. We're going to be doing the same thing, describing it carefully and analyzing it. And you're going to be coming to a conclusion as to whether or not that image is beautiful or sublime. Okay, so that's where we're going. So, and that's what the these three artworks are going to take you through. What the Cimabue, Botticelli, and Perugino, and I apologize for all my Italian friends out there. I am mispronouncing all of those terribly. Okay, so just do your best with those. And now let me show you a little bit about how you're going to go about it. First, let's distinguish aesthetics from taste, just so we know what we're doing and what we're not doing. Okay, so aesthetics versus taste. Aesthetics are the principles, I should say, are the principles that guide the production and interpretation of art. Okay, you're dealing with principles, and these are ideas, and I'm going to come to both of them, beauty and the sublime, in a bit. Okay, so these are going to guide the production. These are what artists deal with, but also what people who are interpreting art use to guide how they are responding and to understand the nature of that response. Okay, and again, it's not a matter of I like or dislike it. Okay, taste is a preference for something based on the pleasure it provides, or a distaste for something based on the lack of pleasure it provides, or disgust it provides. So that's what taste is. Okay, you either like it or you don't. Taste really applies to almost any kind of you know, entertainment. Taste really does apply to art, and I want to be clear. These terms do overlap in what would be known as high art or popular culture. So pop music, for example, you either like it or you don't. There is nothing inherently wrong with pop culture and liking Taylor Swift, if you're one of those people. Okay? So if you like Taylor Swift, that is a judgment of taste. Taylor Swift is not making music for all the ages, and they probably won't be listening to her 150 years from now, like they are listening to Mozart and Beethoven and other things. And the same thing goes with pretty pictures and things like that, and dog pictures and cat pictures that are shared on the internet. You can like them, and that's taste, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not the same thing as the more serious art forms, such as what took place with the modernists in painting in the early part of the 20th century, or what was going on with high art in the Renaissance. With some of the great artists like Michelangelo and others. These are of a different type. Those are the type that involve notions of aesthetics. Now, it's very important to keep in mind they do overlap to a degree. They do. So I'm going to make a distinction between the high art that's covered by Vasari and the more common art forms that are out there. That is not a judgment or a dismissal of them. It's understanding where they essentially tend to fall. The aesthetics of things that you like in popular culture will tend to deal with a more simplified aesthetics, a highly repetitive aesthetics, and it's an aesthetics usually built on a variation of beauty. And I will come to beauty in a bit. But most people enjoy pop culture. Again, we know this most often from popular music, and there's nothing wrong with it at all, but there's oftentimes popular pictures and things like that. Movies that don't challenge you, that are just entertaining, that are funny, or just pleasant, or have, romantic comedies. Those are more of a simpler, they appeal to taste rather than challenging notions of aesthetics, okay? So, and again, I want to be very clear, that distinction is somewhat arbitrary, but you do find when you bury yourself in a certain type of aesthetics. I, for example, have worked in literature for many years, and I know that the writings of T.S. Eliot are far more sophisticated than, say, the nice poems you might read on, Facebook or in Snapchat or something like that. I don't know. So there's something going on that's deeper and more challenging, and that's dealing with aesthetics. Okay, so let me set these out really quickly. The two aesthetic judgments that are primary are beauty and the sublime. Okay, how do we know them? How do we know they're going on? Okay, the beautiful, it's going to provide some kind of unity or harmony, and may demonstrate virtue or something redemptive about it. So that's what the beautiful does, okay? There's some quality about it that's pleasant, and it causes a reflective experience for the viewer of it. So a beautiful painting does that. A beautiful song or a beautiful symphony or something like that does that. People often describe Debussy as beautiful. So in music. It's quite pleasant, it's easier to listen to, and things like that. There is one poet from the Romantic period, a guy named Coleridge, called it a multeity of unity. In other words, there's several different aspects that seem unified in that artwork, and aesthetics applies to different art forms. And obviously it applies to painting, it applies to music, it applies to poetry. Any kind of endeavor that involves some kind of sophistication has some notion of aesthetics. Even something like cooking has an aesthetic to it. You might know that certain cooks and certain folks do have a more refined palate. They can taste the distinctions between things, and they know how they work together. And they know when they're dealing with a gourmet chef who really knows how to work with things in a way that's more sophisticated. So even food has an aesthetic to it. So any area that deals with more challenging aspects of the discipline, those tend to have aesthetics, okay? So this painting right here is by Raphael. This is, I believe, the Symposium. And that's supposed to be Socrates in the middle with Plato and, I believe it's Plato and Aristotle. So this is an example of a painting. Let me expand this one. And you can see the unity that's going on with this painting. They are in the middle. And again, I don't know a lot about this painting. Okay, I believe that might be Plato right here and Aristotle there and Socrates down here. I'm not sure. But you get various figures. My understanding is that there's various figures, and most of these people actually have names and throughout. But there is overall, you can, by going through this painting bit by bit, you're going to see a scene here and a scene over here. But overall, this painting has something of a balance to it and a harmony to it, and it clicks well. So after going through it and walking through it carefully, generally most people have the effect of harmony. Okay, but if you're going to analyze the aesthetics in it, you have to walk through it more carefully to see what's going on. Take that work and go through it carefully, and then you're going to see how the harmony is created. So getting through aesthetics usually is not an easy thing to do. It takes a little bit of time, but people can respond differently. I want to really emphasize somebody could go through this painting and determine that, you know what, there's something truly sublime about it. You can do that. Okay, so I'm going to come to the Sublime now, and we're going to go through that. You can assess it differently. Okay, let's go to the Sublime now. With the Sublime, there's something troubling or overwhelming to the understanding. In other words, you're having a hard time making sense out of this painting or music or other art form or poem. Oftentimes, I've a Picasso painting here. In music, people often talk about Stravinsky as being sublime. If you listen to his symphonies, they are very troubling. They're overwhelming. Beethoven can be described that way. Okay, John Cage's musical works are often described as being sublime because they're very troubling and odd. In poetry, somebody like Ezra Pound or T.S. Eliot or Virginia Woolf, especially somebody like Gertrude Stein, is described as being sublime. And many other artists, it became a very popular aesthetic during the modernist period. It combines, the experience of it is that it combines a pleasure and welcoming the unknown or the novel. And again, it's either overwhelming or just indeterminate. So there's a welcoming of the unknown, but there's a pain. This isn't nice. Through the frustration of understanding the experience, you don't quite know what you've encountered, either in music, poetry, or art. But that's what the Sublime is. I don't want to say it's good because it's not a pleasant experience. It is troubling. These are the artworks that are often dismissed as being unrealistic or ridiculous or something like that. And you know, these, like with the work of Jackson Pollock, is often ridiculed. Sometimes poems, the poems of Gertrude Stein or Ezra Pound are often ridiculed because people don't understand them. But they're not supposed to be deterministic. They're not supposed to, reflect things nicely. So you'll oftentimes have that experience with it. So, so be aware of that. And if you see this painting, for example, by Picasso, it's clearly a woman with a guitar, but it seems to reflect elements of the Cubism at the time. And it can be quite troubling to make sense out of it. But you can, if you appreciate, and the best word is probably appreciate rather than enjoy, appreciate Picasso. There can be a pleasure in welcoming the unknown, but you always recognize that there's something indeterminate about it, something that doesn't quite fit. So that's what the Sublime is. if you make that assessment, there's something that isn't quite right about it. So now I want to be very clear. Two people can appreciate the same work of art, and one could determine it to be beautiful and one can determine it to be sublime. But usually there's some kind of assessment of it, detailed assessment, and some type of reflection involved in it. It's not just a thumbs up or some thumbs down. Okay. In movies, oftentimes you can, people who come away from the movies like Blade Runner and other things can be troubled by it. Those movies can be quite sublime, but movies oftentimes can be really beautiful. If you think about them and there's some kind of unity to them. So again, I want to be clear about this. The assessment, not everybody is going to come to the same assessment. But with this essay, you are all going to come to an assessment of whether or not the artwork that you choose is either beautiful or sublime. And that's what you're going to be doing with the discussions in the class, okay? So the discussions are where you're going to practice doing that. Do you think Simbui is really doing something that has a unity to it? I found this just to be an absolutely magnificent painting. There's aspects of it that are just really engrossing about it. But you might find the unity in it, but you might also find it sublime. Go through the painting and first describe it carefully. Describe what's going on in this segment up here. Here's Jesus sitting right there. And then describe what's going on over here and walk through it carefully. Notice the absolutely stunning gold, the way the reds jump out, and the way you have the brown down here, and the off, kilter nature of this painting. Okay, and then you make your assessment of whether or not you think it's beautiful or sublime. Now, one thing I do want to be very clear about: I should at no point in any of your assessments know that what your views are on the religious aspects of the painting. This is not an opportunity to promote or denigrate any religious viewpoint. During the medieval times, and what Vasari covers is religious paintings. That's what he does primarily, almost entirely. Not all the paintings I posted are religious in nature. The Botticelli one is not. But you should not let your religious convictions, either in favor of or if you're indifferent to, or if you're against, these paintings are Christian in nature. Christianity, that should never come into it. Never. You can make an aesthetic assessment without judging something based on its religious content. So I want to be very clear about this. I should not know whether or not you are, what your religious convictions are at all once you look through the paintings, okay? So no need for that at all, but definitely assess what's going on in there. The other thing is, do not worry if you do not understand what's going on in the painting. Don't worry about it. Just do your best with it. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to look up Simbui. You don't have to look him up at all. You don't have to look up Botticelli. Botticelli is quite well known for Venus on the Half Shell. Is a painting that many people have seen. But you don't have to do it. And that's fine. And this is the Botticelli painting. This one is not as famous one, but I thought this was a magnificent painting. So you can do that one. And again, don't worry, don't bother researching it. But you can see there's 3 different segments in this painting. I believe you guys, the classes will come up with different assessments of the Botticelli. Some will find this beautiful, some will find it troubling. Okay? So with all of these, you can come to different assessments. Different viewpoints are perfectly reasonable. Okay? So don't worry about that if you differ on it. When you choose your painting, go through it. Do it this way. Spend a little time with, just a little bit of time, with the, with the Vasari. I have a Vasari copy on my desk, and so I would urge you to download it. Now, I have one myself, already saved on my computer, and when I open it up, it's a little bit easier to deal with. And here it is right here. You should spend a little bit of time just going through this and pick an artist that you think might be interesting. You might want to do Giorgione. I don't know. Don't read through all of these, but he's got little snippets on each artist. These are all short little descriptions of each artist. And you might want to do one or maybe one of the others. I would urge you, I'm not going to require it, I would urge you to get one of the artists that's a little less known. Now, Michelangelo's on here, and everybody's heard of him. Titian's very well known, Botticelli is well known, Leonardo da Vinci is well known too. I would urge you to go away from the well-known ones and go after the less well-known ones. Use this as an opportunity to check out something different and weird. And again, you can pick something that's religious by nature, but there's plenty of paintings that are not. You decide what you want to write on. But I just want to be very clear. Your religious convictions shouldn't be part of the analysis in any manner. Just go after the aesthetics of it. That's what you should do. Okay. So have some fun with this one. Get going at the Vasari right away and find somebody you want to write on, and then we'll be jumping into it. I'll make one more video next week on how to get the essay going, but go ahead and get those discussions going and keep on the grammar, and we'll get through this last essay. The research, by the way, I should point out the research assignment is going to be, you go to that. Let me show you that really quickly. I have a link to it. It takes you here, the research assignment, the tutorial. And then you start it up, and it's going to guide you through it. Everybody should get through it by Tuesday, and you're going to have one outside source, just one, but make sure you get that done by Tuesday, okay? And it's going to send me the score. All right, take care, folks.